أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب، والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful, we ask Allah to send His greatest peace and blessings upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We praise Allah for all the blessings He has given us. And the greatest blessing being that He allowed us to be of the ones who remain steadfast, dedicated and loyal on the path of our master after the Prophet, the commander of the faithful, the prince of the believers, the protector of the Prophet and his message, Al-Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Praise Allah for this blessing and every blessing, for without Allah we would have nothing. Assalamu alaikum, my dear respected brothers, my dear respected sisters, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The year is 644 AD. And in this year, a new caliph would come to power. Now mind you, the first caliph came to power through what was described in history as a falta, something that came in a very hurried fashion. When the Holy Prophet ﷺ was literally being washed and buried by Imam Ali alayhi salam, there was a group of people from the community of the Prophet that were busy trying to find out amongst themselves who would actually come to power, even though the idea of the succession of the Prophet had been decided by the Prophet himself. But certain individuals in the community of the Prophet had said, we don't want what he's saying, Hasbuna Kitabullah. Sufficient for us is the book of God. Note on that. My dear brothers and sisters, as we find ourselves in the holy nights of Shahr Ramadan, and we find ourselves reciting and reading the Holy Quran every single night, I want you to realize the role of the Quran in your life. The Holy Prophet, before he passed, he said, Inni tarikum fikum al-thaqalain, or thiqlain. I'm leaving with you the two weighty things, two treasures. Kitabullah, the book of God, and atrati, my family. So the Holy Prophet established, if you do not want to stray after me, he said, if you don't want to stray after me, hold on to these two weighty things, the book of God and my family. Why? They complete one another. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, who we're commemorating tonight. Tonight is the eve of the morning that Imam Ali alayhi salam was struck by a poison-dipped sword on his head when he was praying in the masjid of Kufa. So you find yourselves in a prayer hall like this. Imagine being in a hall, a masjid, a mosque, in which your imam is struck on his head in his prayer by an assassin. Picture that. Keep that with you. The Holy Prophet emphasized that I want you to hold on to this book of God, the word of God, and my family. Who was the head of that family? Who was the first imam? Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Imam Ali alayhi salam, in the later days of his life, before he passed, it is narrated that he would say, Saluni, Saluni. Ask me before you lose me. I am al-Quran al-Natiq. I am the walking, talking Quran. Keep that with you. So when you're looking at this beautiful word of God, know that the benefit of it, staying on that straight path with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, cannot be by the words of God, through His holy Prophet, cannot be without Ahlul Bayt. So hold on to both. If you ever find yourself or find somebody else saying, well, show it to me in the Quran. Who here has heard that before? I didn't see it in the Quran. Show it to me. Keep your hands raised. Show it to me in the Quran. Brothers and sisters, our faith, our religion is not superficial. It's very deep. I ask you, some of the simplest things, some of the simplest instructions that we have in our religion, our faith, are not in the Quran. For example, the number of rak'at that you pray in each one of your prayers. Are all of them in the Quran? No. Why? The Quran is not that. That's not the role of the Quran. So before we take something, inherit a tradition, by the way, that is not our tradition. That is not from Sunnat Rasulullah. That is not from the Sunnah of our Holy Prophet. Before we start doing that, we need to realize this culture of show it to me in the Quran, or I only take what's in the Quran, it came from those who at the deathbed of Rasulullah said, Hasbuna kitabullah. We only want what's in the book of God. Enough for us is the book of God. Meaning, we don't want the Prophet, we don't want Ahlul Bayt. We just want what's in the book of God. Be wary of that culture. Our emphasis is understanding the history to get context to see why we believe what we believe. 644 AD, in the house of Uthman, because Uthman came to power in this year after the reign of the first and the second, which came to be about a total of 12 years after the death of the Holy Prophet, and then Uthman himself would rule for 12 years. Do you want to know how the reign of Uthman started? He gathered all of his companions, all of his friends, all of his family members. In which tribe did Uthman belong to? He was from the descendants of Umayyah. Uthman was from Banu Umayyah. Uthman has them all gathered in his home. And the person who by this year, 12 years after the death of the Prophet, is still the eldest and chief of Banu Umayyah is, guess who? Abu Sufyan. At this time, Abu Sufyan, the father of Muawiyah, the father of Yazid, again, bringing you context so that when we're coming to commemorate in Muharram, 3 months from this month, you see the context, you see what we're talking about here. Abu Sufyan is blind at this time. He asks, is there anyone that is gharib here? في حدا غريب هون؟ لا, فيش حدا غريب. Nobody's strange here. Everyone's part of the family. Uthman and everyone around him say, speak uncle. So imagine this, imagine the scene. They're in the house of the new Khalifa. And Abu Sufyan says, O sons of Umayyah, hold on to the reins of power and do not let go. Your time has come. And pass it down from one to the next, for it is yours. By the one that Abu Sufyan swears by, there is no heaven and there is no hell. You would think that the Khalifa would stop him, would say blasphemy, would say no, what's wrong? Don't say that. There's no heaven. This is kufr. What's going on? Nothing. Just affirmation, nodding of the heads. This was the house of Uthman. This is what history tells us of the way that the new administration of Uthman started, how it began. With the words of Abu Sufyan, who was who? The arch enemy of the Holy Prophet. You guys remember in the past few nights when we were talking about the battles and the persecution against the Prophet, the people who basically ran the Prophet out of town, where the Prophet had to literally leave by night incognito so that he can save his own life. The messenger of God, who was being chased down by who? Abu Sufyan. In Badr, in Uhud, in Khandaq, and back to Mecca. Now who's in the house of the Caliph? Abu Sufyan, saying, guess who won, guys? We did. So Uthman would rule for 12 years. During the reign of Uthman, what happened? Think of every important post that would exist in this growing empire, because the caliphate before him, the second caliph, Umar, he was notable for what? Conquest. Going into Persia, going into Egypt, expanding the Muslim lands by any means necessary. Uthman continued on that path, and then took all of the positions of power. So think about the governor of this province, the governor of Basra, the governor of Egypt, the governor of Syria. Think about all of these positions and who Uthman would put into these positions. He would put people like Walid ibn Abi Mu'ayt, a man who would become the governor of Basra, who would lead people in prayer drunk. I'm giving these details so that you can understand why somebody like Yazid ibn Muawiyah would come to power. Because some people would be like so surprised how only about 5 decades after the Prophet's death that somebody like that would come to power. Walid leads prayers. Salatul Subh, he's praying. He comes to prayer, he's drunk. He prays Salatul Subh 8 rak'at. Somebody nudges him, somebody starts whispering, there becomes like murmurs in the crowd. Like, what's going on? Okay, it's when is he gonna stop? He turns around and he's like, if you want, I can pray some more. Complete mockery of the faith. Complete mockery of the religion. He brings back individuals, his own cousins, that were exiled by the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Marwan ibn al-Hakam and his father al-Hakam, who were literally exiled by the Prophet himself, saying these people are not to be part of our community anymore. Uthman brings them back. Why? They're his cousins. And not only that, he gives them positions of power, gives them access to the treasury, makes them rich. One of the things that you'll see is most notable, and I don't mean notable in a respectful way, but something that history would record, is the rise of somebody specific in the Umayyad clan, Muawiyah. Now, many people, when they look at Muawiyah, they may be looking at Muawiyah as he was in opposition to Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. After Imam Ali alayhi salam was assassinated and killed, Imam al-Hasan, Muawiyah, there was a peace accord. They were fighting each other initially. Then Imam Hassan alayhi salam strikes a peace accord in order to maintain the peace. Some people don't understand how Muawiyah came to power. I want to give you a little bit of a background to this so that you can see how Muawiyah from Abu Sufyan to Yazid facilitates all of this power. And how the rise of Umayyah not only came through Uthman, but specifically through the work of Muawiyah. In 632 AD, who died? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He passes away. Abu Bakr comes to power as the first Khalifa. One of the first policies, or one of the first things that come into action in this administration was the conquest of Syria. The deputy commander of the conquest of Syria was Muawiyah. Who was the commander? His brother Yazid, Yazid the first. So there was Yazid the first, Muawiyah's brother, and then Yazid, the son of Muawiyah, who comes later on in the story. Muawiyah is a deputy commander in 632 to 634. From 634 on to 639, he's playing this role with his brother, which not only they go from deputy commander and commander, they go to becoming the de facto governors of Syria. In 639, Yazid the first, Muawiyah's brother, dies. Who takes his position? Muawiyah. Now Muawiyah is the de facto ruler of Syria. By the way, Syria in this time includes what? Modern day Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine. So he's ruling all of this place now as a military ruler. Then in 644 AD, Uthman makes Syria an official province and appoints Muawiyah as its governor. For those of you who are thinking to the day of Ashura, when Yazid comes to power and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam refuses to give bay'ah to Yazid, do you know how long Muawiyah has been in power from that point and before that point? 4 decades. 4 decades. Muawiyah is ruling for about 2 decades, ruling this huge province, And then, at the death of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam at 661 AD, and then with the peace treaty with Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, Muawiyah becomes the ruler, the Khalifa of all of the Muslim empire. When you see this history and the rise of Umayyah, immediately after the death of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, you can't help but think when the Holy Prophet said, I am leaving with you the two weighty things, the Book of God and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, you can't help but think, no wonder the Prophet emphasized Ahlul Bayt. It's because these guys were right on it, right away. Muawiyah, the son of Abu Sufyan, is a governor of one of the biggest provinces in this new Muslim empire. And then this same man would go on to challenge Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam after he's ruling all this time in Syria. And then when Imam Ali alayhi salam comes to power by the election of the people, arguably Ali ibn Abi Talib was the first elected leader of not just the Muslims, but of all Arab people and all of Arab history. When Imam Ali alayhi salam comes to power in 665 or 656 AD and rules for just less than 5 years, in those 5 years, less than 5 years, Imam Ali alayhi salam faces 3 civil wars. One of them being by whom? Muawiyah. Muawiyah. None other than him. Now, why is this significant? Who here is a lover of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam? Who here looks forward to commemorate Imam al-Hussein every year during Muharram? Who here is rejuvenated by the memory of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam? Beautiful. Unless you dig deeper to see what Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was facing off with, who he was facing off with, you won't completely appreciate his sacrifice. It's one thing to say that we're remembering Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam for his tragedy, but when you look at this history and you dig deeper, you see, wow, look at the odds he faced. Look at what he had to sacrifice against. No wonder why when he said, oh people, don't you know who I am? No wonder they said, yeah, we know, but we still want to kill you. It's because of this rise of the Umayyads that was reinforced from the first caliph to the second caliph to the third caliph. And then when Imam Ali alayhi salam came to clean house, they fought him. They fought him. And they fought him so severely that they didn't care if thousands of Muslims died. In fact, they were like, you know what? We'll kill him too. If you dig deeper to see this history, you will understand the challenges of today. You will understand your own identity. You will understand who you are and what you belong to. And it's not merely about the conflict. It's about, in that conflict, how did Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam lead? What did they do? So when Imam Ali alayhi salam, even with Uthman and even with all that he did, when the people came, when certain individuals came to attack Uthman, Imam Ali alayhi salam would stand in front of the house of Uthman and say, no, you're not going to cause mischief. You're not going to cause fitna. You're not going to cause sedition. You're not going to take a life without due right. There's a process. There's law. There's justice that has to be served. And you're not the one to serve the justice. Imam Ali alayhi salam would be that person. No matter who it was, no matter what the circumstance, Imam Ali alayhi salam would do what was right through and through. Now you and I, when we're coming today, and we're thinking to ourselves, I'm coming, I'm a lover of Imam Ali alayhi salam, I'm a Shia, I'm a follower of Ahlul Bayt, I want to be a true Muslim, I want to follow the Prophet and his family. I want to. What do I do with all of that today? This is history, great. Who wants to know, what do I do with all of that today? How do I take that? How do I implement that? How do I use that today? It's great to learn history, but then what do I do with that today? What do I do with that right now? I'm facing struggles. I'm facing challenges. I'm facing issues. What do I do with that today? Who wants to know? What do I do with that today? How do I take this into my own life? Beautiful. Every single thing that you learn from Ahlul Bayt, from their life, from their legacy, should reinforce a certain paradigm, a certain worldview. What's your paradigm? Meaning what? How do you see the world? How do you look at the world? How do you filter information? What lens do you see the world in? Is it God-centric? Is it faith-based? Is it purpose-driven or not? What drives you? What motivates you? What tells you what to do and what not to do? How do you make decisions in your life? Is, for example, and I want to challenge everybody here tonight, and challenge myself first. Challenge always has to be at home first. When you are taking what you're doing in the holy month of Ramadan, and you're learning about your faith, when you're taking all of this, is this a part of your life or is it the foundation of your life? Now, foundation sounds better than part, right? So we would naturally say, oh, no, Hajj, yeah, it's foundation. Foundation, it's not part. But is it really? Is this a foundation to our life or is it a part of my life? Just like my work is a part of my life, just like my family is a part of my life, just like football is a part of my life, just like etc., etc., etc. Religion, it's a part of my life. God, it's a part of my life. Let me take God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is a part of my life. Or is He the foundation of my life, the center of my life? And this is very easy to say, guys. This is very easy to talk about. It's very easy for me to come up here and talk about this. It's a different thing to live it, to be it. Why? How many of us have recently experienced a death in our family or a friend's family, somebody in the community? Who's recently experienced a death? Okay? The closer it is to home, the more perspective you gain, right? So the closer the person is, it could be, let's say, a distant relative. Allah yarhamu, you go and you pay condolences. Okay, no problem. But then what if it becomes an uncle, an aunt, your grandparents, your father, your mother, your brother, your sister? Totally different. Your best friend, totally different, right? Right? The perspective gets closer and closer and closer. When you develop a deeper understanding, when you gain more information, more context about Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, your perspective gets deeper with Ahlul Bayt so that what you learn from them and what you take from them affects you that much more. So that hopefully in these nights, my dear brothers and sisters, as we continue to learn, we continue to bring that context, now you gain a greater appreciation of Imam Ali alayhi salam. I learned something new about him. I didn't realize he did that. I didn't realize he faced off with these kind of people. I didn't realize that they did this to him. And then you build that relationship deeper and deeper and deeper.